Hello, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hell is a figment of your imagination. This is not the Greek word you are looking for. It was all a bad dream. Oh, am I doing that right? Is that how the Jedi mind? Okay, sorry. Look, it's cold, alright? Got the beard. Yeah. And there are creatures. There are turkeys wandering around me. I feel like I should name them. Let's see. Edward. Maybe. No, Duncan doesn't sound right. Anyway, I'm sorry. We need to talk about hell. It's important. Let me take this off. It's serious time. Yes, the supposed place of eternal torment. Alright, let me try to be clear and concise and really trying to help people get free of this really, really wretched teaching. So we've gone over a couple of verses about the reconciliation of all and how the word eternal isn't quite what we thought it was. The Greek word aion and its adjective. So it's judgment is a matter of time, and then God reconciles after judgment. It is not unending. So, where do we get our word hell? Let's go back to Old English. In Old English, the word hell, and it just has one L, H-E-L, it means concealed or unseen. So if I was to, now the word hell, I don't have a helmet, but the word hell is in helmet, and it conceals your head. So if I do this, and I go like that, you can't see me anymore. You cannot see me. I am concealed. Just like the Jedi conceal themselves. Or the Sith. What's the name of that first, the prequel? The Phantom Menace. That's it. I don't know why I have Star Wars in my brain. I get odd things in my brain. Yes, as the Jedi and the Sith conceal themselves from all of the non-force sensitive people, so a helmet conceals the head. So that's what the word meant. It just meant unseen. As with all pagan nations, it turns into a mythology to try to explain death. I'm not going to get into death today, but that's what they're trying to do, is explain what death is. And they eventually turn death into another form of life. So the Norse mythology, they took the word hell, gave it a capital H, and turned it into a female deity, the daughter of Loki. She is the caretaker of Helheim. Helheim is not a fiery place. It's probably cold. The people there are not good people or bad people. They're just everyone. Everyone goes to Helheim, or hell, in Norse mythology. Yeah, there's not really any clear-cut text that shows us that there's punishments going on. It seems like they're just living out their earthly lives in Helheim. Maybe the setting is a little bit colder. I'm play God of War, okay? If anybody's played God of War, they know what I'm talking about. Helheim is cold. But how is it that the word hell got this this label of fiery, you're boiling. Unfortunately, Christian missionaries, and the only text that we have concerning the Scandinavian understanding of Helheim being a place of punishment comes from Christian writings. I know it's terrible, but that is the truth. The Norse mythology in itself is indifferent. It's not malevolent and it's not benevolent. It's their explanation of death. So the Christian missionaries came in, they brought in the fire and the torment. I can't say that's an improvement. Yes, they brought in the name of Christ, but I think they did a lot of damage with their new teaching of eternal torment. So, hell, unseen, that's what it means. So, what is the Greek word that is translated hell in what we call the New Testament? Well, the problem is I can't answer that question because there's actually 3 Greek words, not just one. So I'm going to kind of gloss over those 3 words. I'm going to say this every time I do a video. Please get a concordance. And if you don't get a physical copy of one, they're so easy to come across, and you have online software. Bible Hub is the one I use the most. And you can look at all of the Greek words, and they do a very good job showing you. Strong's Concordance has them all numbered, so they're all different. We have this information, but our translators are still translating 3 words as hell. It's unfortunate. So, excuse me. Let's go over those 3 words. Our first is Tartarus. Tartarus in Greek mythology is where the Titans were bound. I can't remember. It's been a while since I studied it. But yeah, it was a prison for the Titans. Everybody knows the story with Zeus and Poseidon and Hades, and then the Titans are Kronos is the father, and he eats them. I don't know. Just like Norse mythology, interesting stories, but trying to understand death, and it's the same thing over and over again. So Peter, in his second epistle, in chapter 2, verse 4, says, "For if God spares not sending messengers," and this is my literal version I'm reading from, angels, these are celestial beings, "but thrusting them into the gloomy caverns of Tartarus, gives them up to be kept for chastening, judging." Alright, so the popular translations have hell, but there is an issue with that because Paul is not promoting Greek mythology. Not Paul, I'm sorry, Peter. Paul wouldn't either, but Peter is not promoting Greek mythology here. And even in the literal translation, you don't get the full force of what he's saying. This is not a noun. Tartarus, it's a verb, and specifically it's a participle. Participles are tricky. They're verbal adjectives. They can take on a different meaning according to context, grammar. But with this, after looking at an ultra literal translation of this, it could be translated Tartarusing. So, into the gloomy caverns Tartarusing. It isn't a place, it's more of a state or an action. So, to be clear, Peter is not saying that these angels are in a mythological Greek prison. He's writing in common Greek, and he's using a figure to show a similarity. Now, these are messengers. They are in a prison. Is it a prison outside of the earth, or is it in the earth? Is that why he used the figure? I'm not sure. They are in a gloomy cavern. There's no fire here. So this in itself raises the question, how do you reconcile that with the understood Christian hell? With the fire, and it's just a gloomy place is not lit up with fire. It sounds like it's just a prison cell, temporary. And it's only used one time. So you can't really make much of a point with that one. Our second word that is translated hell in the New Testament is Hades. I guess Hades would be the equivalent of Helheim in Norse mythology. So you got the Greek mythology and the Norse. The underworld. Like the people that believed in Helheim, most of the Greeks believed that there was, well, except for some of the, I think it was the Stoic philosophers. Now there was the Epicurean and there was the Stoic philosophers. And I can't remember which side actually thought that death was oblivion. One of them did. But the rest of the Greeks thought that there was a place like Helheim. They call it Hades. And inside of Hades you have Elysium, and you have other portions, and these mythologies changed as time went on. But our word here is Hades. And what does Hades mean? It means unseen. And I'm going to prove this to you. In Acts chapter 2. How do I know that for sure that Hades means unseen? Well, I can go to the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, and I can find a verse, and if I know for certain that a Hebrew word has no mythological baggage. I mean, Hebrew is like, that was God's language, I guess, right? I mean, Greek is inspired as well. God used it, but Hebrew is Hebrew, true Hebrew. But in Acts chapter 2, Peter is quoting from the Old Testament. So in verse 26, he says, "Therefore gladdened was my heart, and exultant my tongue. Now still my flesh also shall be tenting in expectation. For thou wilt not be forsaking my soul in the unseen, nor wilt thou be giving thy benign one to be acquainted with decay." Unseen is how the literal version here translates Hades. The King James says hell. So why did I mention that this is a quotation from the Old Testament? Well, in the Old Testament, the word translated in place of Hades is Sheol. And Sheol means unseen. The root of it is actually, I think, it means ask. It's like asking a question, where are they? So we know that God has taken the Greek language and shown us the equivalent of what the word is. So every time you see Hades, you go back to the Hebrew and you think Sheol, and they had the same meaning. No mythological baggage, no pagan influence. And this is talking about Christ. And I'm not going to get it there. I need to explain what death is, but it would take me an hour to go through that. I'll give you a little taste. Ecclesiastes 9:5. The dead know nothing. Death is equated to sleep as a euphemism. In the case of Lazarus, Christ says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. And the disciples took it literally. They said, well, we'll wake him up. And he said, no, our Lazarus has died. So if it's compared to sleep, and we are unconscious in sleep, and then it says that the dead know nothing, well, that's a good starting point. But we'll get into it. But today we just need to go over these words and understand that it has nothing to do with our misconception of God's judgments. So it just means unseen, Hades. Here's Matthew chapter 11, talking about an entire city, Capernaum. And you, Capernaum, not to heaven shall you be exalted. To the unseen, or Hades, shall you subside. For if the powerful deeds which are occurring in you had occurred in Sodom, it might remain unto today. So this is a very literal statement. We can't see Capernaum because it is gone. We also can't see Sodom because it's gone. And I think there's one more. I have to skip. The word Hades is used in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. I have to go over that separately because it would take too long. We will go over it. Alright, here's unseen being used not of a physical object like a city, or of talking about a person, Christ, but of spiritual forces, specifically forces of wickedness. And we have a hierarchy of evil celestial beings. So in Matthew 16, verse 18, Christ is talking to Peter. He says, now I also am saying to you that you are Peter, and on this rock will I be building my ecclesia, or a church, building my church. And the gates of the unseen, or Hades, shall not be prevailing against it. Now Christ isn't talking about like Hades with a capital H coming against Peter, or maybe like Cerberus. Wasn't that the three-headed dog? No, he is talking about unseen forces, Satan. We cannot perceive them as human beings with our eyes. So the word still applies. It means the same thing. It's just the context is a bit different. But it's not talking about a fiery place of torment that is coming against Peter. It has nothing to do with fire. So we've got Tartarus. We've got Hades. Now the last one, this is used the most. I was going to say something, but I'm not going to. Our last word is Gehenna. A little lesson in Gehenna. If you've never read this, Gehenna is an actual physical location just south of Jerusalem. I think it's around Jerusalem. I think it's at the southern portion. It's a valley. It's known as the Valley of the Sons of Hinnom. It's not considered a nice place for Israelites because back in the Old Testament, they sacrificed their children to Baal. And it represents national judgment. Now we're reading from Matthew here in chapter 5. So we have to look at the context. Who is Christ speaking to? What is he speaking about? So he's speaking to Israelites and the kingdom that was promised to them. It says this is completely different than Paul's message. And the word Gehenna is translated hell throughout this whole passage from 22 through 30. And let me just read it. And I'll just say Gehenna where it says hell. And Christ is refining the law here. He is showing their ineptitude, how they cannot fulfill the law. At this point, the Israelites should have understood that the law was only given in order to increase the severity of the crime. Paul talks about this in Romans. So in verse 22, yet I am saying to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to the judging. Yet whoever may be saying to his brother, Raka, I think that means useless, shall be liable to the Sanhedrin. Yet whoever may be saying stupid shall be liable to the Gehenna of fire. And remember, this Gehenna has to do with national judgment. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention something. In the first century, Gehenna was a trash dump. The Romans crucified people. They would throw their bodies into this valley, a literal valley, and trash, all sorts of whatever they didn't want. If you're in Jerusalem, you toss it over the wall. And there's always fires going in Gehenna. Okay? So I needed to mention that there is always fires burning to burn up all the garbage. Verse 23, if then you should be offering your approach present on the altar. Now the approach present is for an Israelite. They go up to the temple. And there you should be reminded that your brother has anything against you. Leave your approach present there in front of the altar and go away. First be placated toward your brother, and then coming be offering your approach present. You be humoring your plaintiff quickly while you are with him on the way, lest at some time the plaintiff may be giving you up to the judge, and the judge to the deputy, and you should be cast into jail. Verily I am saying to you, by no means may you be coming out thence till you should be paying the last quadrans. You hear that it was declared, you shall not be committing adultery. Yet I am saying to you that every man looking at a woman to lust for her already commits adultery with her in his heart. Now if your right eye is snaring you, wrench it out and cast it from you. I just have to say something here. So the translators have translated Gehenna as hell here. They take that literally. But it says in verse 29 that if your right eye is snaring you, wrench it out. I have never been to a church where most of the congregants are missing their right eye. And thank God that they don't take that part literally. But somehow they take the second part, translated hell, literally. Now if your right eye is snaring you, wrench it out and cast it from you. For it is expedient for you that one of your members should perish, and not your whole body be cast into Gehenna, the trash dump. And if your right hand is snaring you, strike it off and cast it from you. I have never been to a church where most of the congregants are missing their right hand. Thank God. For it is expedient for you that one of your members should perish, and not your whole body pass away into Gehenna. Okay, and Gehenna is used other places. It is strictly an Israelite term. National judgment. What was being proclaimed? The kingdom of the heavens. We know what happened. We know what God's intention was, for Christ to be crucified. But the Israelites had to reject him first. And this actually isn't talking about the time before his crucifixion, or even the Pentecostal era. It's more talking about the millennial kingdom, the 1,000 years. There will be swift judgment in that kingdom. And like Ananias and Sapphira, I think that's in Acts chapter 5. If you violate the law, and once again, this is completely separate from Paul's message. This is not transcendent grace. If you violate the law, you are automatically executed. That doesn't mean that you burn forever. Do you know who else was executed for violating the law? Moses. Moses and Aaron were both executed. I know it doesn't sound right to say that God executed them, but if you look at the context, I think it's Numbers chapter 20 and Deuteronomy chapter 32, that both went up to a mountain, and there was nothing wrong with them, but when they never come back down. So God took their lives. Now we know that Moses will be in the kingdom, right? The Mount of Transfiguration. But when it comes to Israel, the law is extremely important. Now we are not under the law. God may discipline us, but we are not under the law. So all this language with Gehenna, this is not God putting you in some place of eternal torment, which is completely foreign. It's really just an amalgamation. Hell, it's an amalgamation of Israel's gospel and pagan concepts, and over the centuries it formed, and then here you go. And it's taught in, I mean, you turn on your television and it's almost Halloween. You're going to see all kinds like Freddy Krueger and Friday the 13th, and they'll be talking about hell, and they climbed out of hell and did this, and all these other movies. No, that is not scriptural at all. But we'll get into the very depressing subject of death. That's loud, I'm sorry. That's okay. We'll get into death, and we'll get into the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, and I'm sure there's some things I've forgotten, but let me put this back on. Trying to look mysterious. Okay, read your Bible. Look into the concordance. Yeah. So thanks for listening, and it's getting a little cold, so I'm gonna wrap this up, and you might see me in a couple of days, you might not, I don't know. You know, I'm like the wind. I'm all over the place. Check it out for yourself. 3 words. Look at those. Actually 4. Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, Tartarus. And that's it. So God bless, and see you next time.